All right, here we are, ecology video number 2. I am on number 4. Number 3 in your notes was population growth. And now we're going to look at community structure and population interactions. So we're going to look at how do members of a species interact and how do they interact with other species. That would be a community. First thing we're going to look at is competition. So you remember the word niche. A niche refers to an organism's role in its environment, and that refers to what resources does it use, what uses it, does it contribute anything to the environment as a whole. So competition tells us that two organisms, if they have the same niche, they're going to compete for that resource, and only one is going to be the survivor in that area. So we have a rule. Our guy is Gauss. Gauss came up with this idea. So Gauss's competitive exclusion principle, that's the name of his theory. Two species cannot coexist in a community if they share a niche. So if we have two things in the same area, two different species, and they both occupy the same niche, they're going to compete. And one will win and one will not. So here's my example. I know this is in another language, so I'm just going to describe it to you. I really liked their graph, but I realized that this is not in English. These are two species of paramecium. Paramecium are a small, slipper-like, unicellular organism with all the little cilia all around them. And here are two different species, Aurelia and Caudatum. These two species, if you grow them in separate petri dishes, they flourish. They have different carrying capacities, but they both do very, very well. So in one petri dish, it shows that you can get about 150 species. That's its K. Remember, K was carrying capacity. So it reaches its carrying capacity around there in its petri dish. And this other species reaches its around 450. So if they're in separate trays, they both survive fabulously. If you put them in the same tray, you will notice they both start increasing in frequency, but then the caudatum goes down and is wiped out. The population is completely gone after 16 days. And with Aurelia, that is much more the competitor, so it survives and flourishes, and its number goes up right here. So they must occupy the same niche. If when you place them in the same petri dish, one becomes prevalent and one gets wiped out. All right, number 2 under competition here, resource partitioning. If we are going to be in the same area, we sometimes have to divide up our resources. So I like to give this example of if you went to a salad bar. Here's the whole salad bar in front of me, and if I just think about what is my fundamental niche, my fundamental niche is everything that I would like to eat on the salad bar. So, oh, I want some lettuce and some spinach and some carrots and broccoli and little chickpeas, and I want broccoli, anything that I want to choose. That's my fundamental niche. Anything that I would have if I'm not in competition with anyone else. Now my realized niche is when I'm in competition. So let's say someone else is bugging in on my salad bar here and I can't get over to this side. I'm not able to maybe get the chickpeas, or maybe I'm not able to get the carrots, but I'm still going to be able to get my lettuce and my spinach, and maybe over here I can get my broccoli. So that is my realized niche. I will resource partition. Partition, think of it as like a gate or a block. I will limit the resources that I use based on my competition. So I just talked about fundamental versus realized. I am altering my food source, or maybe I'm altering the time of the day. If two of us are in competition here, we might take turns at the salad bar. And by taking turns, that allows us to use the same resource at different times. You know that there's different animals that eat only at dawn and dusk. They call that diurnal. Deer often eat just dawn and dusk. And there's other ones that only eat at night, and there's other ones that only eat right midday. Another thing is they might portion the plant that they're eating. So there are several species of birds that will occupy one tree, and they eat the same nutrients, but they eat it from different areas of the tree. Some of them only feed from the bottom of the tree, and others only feed from the middle section, and others only from the top. So they are partitioning or breaking or dividing up their resources. Allows them to compete less and live in the same place. All right, our third one, character displacement. Your character is your physical features and your behaviors. If you are displaced, it means you start behaving or your features change due to this resource partitioning. So if I again think of my example of my salad bar, if my teeth actually change from what I am eating, and as a population change, I mean evolution over generations. Let's say that I was always eating really hard nuts. Chances are the the individuals of that species that have the hardest teeth are going to be the most successful, and they are going to carry on that fitness, that strength of their teeth. So you might actually see alleles increase in frequency of having really strong teeth. On the other side of the salad bar, as they're changing, maybe they need to adapt in a different way. They're not eating a hard or nut part of the salad bar, but instead they're having a different section of it, which requires their teeth to be able to tear more. So an increase in teeth, maybe the way that they are shaped, able to tear the food better, that might increase in frequency. We call that character displacement. So if the species in competition are altered due to resource partitioning. So it can be an alteration in behavior or an alteration in form. Differences in beak structure is a great example. So they know that there was one common ancestral finch in South America, and that finch ended up in the Galapagos Islands, and over many generations from that original group of finch, there are now 13 different species of finch. And they believe that each of the finch species that resulted adapted to different parts of the environment based on what they eat. So here are some that are eating different plants, and there are some that are eating butterflies and different beetles, other plants, other organisms, maybe the seeds from those plants require different structures. Their beak shape changed drastically. So what originally causes those changes in beak shapes? Mutations. What allows different ones to survive in these different areas of the island? Natural selection. Which ones are most fit and most likely to survive? When you see this displacement, a lot of different things resulting, it's usually due to this resource partitioning. The fact that they were needing to survive and not compete with the others made them change what their food source was, and you see overall changes in their body, their morphology, their shape, in their beaks. All right, B, predation. So first we were just, let me cover up some of this here. We were just talking about the competition for A. Now we're going to talk about predation, meaning how does one organism eat another. So animals eating animals, animals eating plants. We have definitely noticed over thousands of years defenses, things that might help protect and allow them to survive. So what kind of defenses have we seen? In plants, if you think for a minute, what structures in a plant might allow them to defend themselves? Right outside this window, if you didn't see it before when we were dropping the pill bugs, there's a nettle plant. And I'm not going to grab it because it's all spikes and thorns. So that is a natural defense that a plant might have. Another one is poisons. So over here, this is a milkweed plant, and that milky white, very sticky sap that comes out from a milkweed plant is actually toxic to many animals. Also, the white milk that comes out of poinsettias. Poinsettias at Christmas time, you have to be really careful when little kids are around, because if they eat any part of the leaves and their flower leaves, then it could be very poisonous. So poisons also from a plant. Animal defenses. What do animals have that keep others away? They can definitely make noises, growl, bare their teeth. Maybe they have really sharp fangs, or porcupines have all of those needles. They have what we break up into two categories. Active defenses, meaning what do they do, or passive, what do they have? So fleeing, defending, hiding, coloration for passive, but we can also think about spikes or claws or anything that allows them to defend themselves as an animal being attacked by another animal. All right, when we talk about coloration, there's two types of coloration that I want you to know. Aposematic means warning coloration. A lot of snakes have warning coloration, meaning you see their banding pattern or you see the reds or yellows and you know, like, oh wow, that is probably a toxic snake. I should stay away from that snake. Camouflage is what we call cryptic coloration, meaning it blends in. So like a walking stick or this, if you look really carefully, you can see this animal right here. All right, if an animal is not noxious, so it's not poisonous, it's not harmful in any natural way to a potential predator, why not look like an animal that is? This third one that we want to look at is mimicry. How can they mimic another organism and therefore not get eaten? So here's an example. First is Batesian mimicry. Batesian means it's a copycat. They look like each other. One is harmful, one is not. So one harmless animal mimics the coloration of the harmful, distasteful, or poisonous one. So here's an example. We have a viceroy butterfly, and it looks like a monarch butterfly, but it lacks the bad taste. When a bird eats a monarch butterfly, it spits it out. Ew, disgusting, terrible. Ah, that is a horrible taste. I'm never going to eat one of those again. Then it sees a viceroy butterfly. Ah, that's another one of those terrible things. And it really isn't. There's a slight difference in the venation and these little dots, and that's really the only difference. So they don't notice the difference. They associate, oh, the orange and the stripes, oh, that's a terrible butterfly. I'm not going to eat that one. So the viceroy, even though they maybe taste delicious to a bird, they're avoided. So I want you to think for a minute about a link to evolution. How do we link these butterflies to everything that we talk about with natural selection and survival of the fittest? The butterflies that have this adaptation, looking like a bad one, they survive, they reproduce, they pass on those mimic traits. So the ones that originally had this coloration that looks like a monarch, that actually increased in frequency because they weren't eaten. So they become more abundant in the population. It has increased fitness if you mimic something that's actually tastes terrible to others. All right, next kind of mimicry is called Müllerian mimicry. And Müllerian mimicry, they're actually both bad. So if something has bad features, I think of all these flying bugs that can sting. All stinging flying things we avoid. They come in the window and everyone's like, ah, we're afraid they're going to sting us because they pretty much all do. So they all get avoided based on those characteristics. All right, symbiotic relationships. This is our last part of number 4. We looked at competition, and we looked at how the organisms defend or mimic or somehow keep themselves alive. Now we're going to look at their symbiotic relationships, which means if you have two animals that are living close together, or an animal and a plant, or a fungus and an algae, if we have two that are really close living quarters, they might be benefiting each other. That's one type. That's called mutualism. In mutualism, they are both benefited. So I put the example here of our little fish. Here's our little Nemo. And this is a sea anemone. So clownfish and sea anemones have a mutualistic relationship. First of all, the anemone offers protection for the clownfish. It actually can hide in there. It's less likely to be seen by predators. It has a very bright coloration to it, and so it needs a place where it could actually hide, and it can hide within this. There are other fish that want to eat the sea anemone, but the sea anemone, if there's a clownfish there, they won't come in. So it's sort of like this guard that helps keep other fish that would normally eat the sea anemone away. So this is benefited because it has protection. This is benefited because it's less likely to be eaten by other fish. All right, another example of a symbiotic relationship is parasitism. This is probably the easiest to remember. Well, they're all easy to remember. Mutual, plus, plus. This one is a plus minus. A parasite is something that you don't want in you because it's going to harm you. So one benefits, one is harmed. You can think of tapeworms in you or any other vertebrate. You can think of fleas on a dog. One is eating and getting nutrients and benefiting, and the other one is being eaten and being harmed. So there's our examples. Our last one, commensalism. This one means that one is benefited and one is unaffected. So a plus and a 0. A great example that I would actually agree with, there are some birds like cattle egrets that stay right on the farm, right with horses, cattle, while they're grazing. Well, as they're grazing, horses and cattle tend to beat their hoofs on the ground, and as they do that, they stir up bugs, and the birds eat the bugs. Now, the horse is pretty much unaffected. It's totally going to stomp its foot anyways, and it's sort of an extra result that it made the bugs come up in the air and the birds eat the bugs. But I would have to argue that commensalism, even though we teach it in AP biology, and you'll probably learn about it more in college, when you really look closely at a symbiotic relationship, you usually can find something, if you dig deep enough, that really seems like it's benefiting or harming the other. So I would say the majority of examples that we run across fall into mutualism or parasitism, and you really have to really work it out to make sure that something is truly unaffected. An example that I give is that sometimes they'll say, oh, a bird nesting in a tree, the tree is unaffected. But I tend to argue that and say that the tree is often affected in some way, because as that bird nests there, chances are there's going to be insects living in the nest. The insects might eat the leaves of the tree, and it wouldn't have done that otherwise. So I think it could be proved as a case of parasitism. All right, make sure you read through the text on all of this and add to your Cornell notes. Each unit, I am expecting to see more and more in your Cornell notes in terms of details.